Hey, welcome World Entertainment. And recently, James Cameron sat down with none other than Michael Biehn to talk about all things in their careers. And one of the questions that came up in the whole thing was about the Alien franchise, which naturally it would because they did Aliens together. By the way, I'd like to know, because this seems to be a interview done by Michael Biehn on some sort of podcast, why all of a sudden have all these actors got podcasts? It's weird, isn't it? But I did try and find the clips where he answered the questions and stuff, but the whole interview is an hour and 40 minutes, and I couldn't find it, and I wasn't sitting through the whole thing. I'll probably end up watching it at some stage, but I wasn't going through all that. We have it written here anyway, because I just wanted to get how he sounds when he's saying it, because reading something is different. You can interpret it differently than how they say it. But it's interesting because basically Cameron has flat out said they couldn't pay me enough money to go back to that franchise. That's interesting. It's also interesting what he says about Alien Romulus, because if you remember, Fede Alvarez came out and was very much talking about how James Cameron absolutely gave him his blessing and said it was a fantastic follow-up to the Alien franchise, and it was the best thing since probably Aliens and all this stuff. And yeah, that's not quite how James Cameron saw it. So let's dive into this. So James Cameron, the director of Aliens, has never been one to shy away from sharing his opinion about the films in the franchise. In a recent podcast interview with Michael Biehn, who played Dwayne Hicks. By the way, did anyone realize Hicks's first name was Dwayne? Because I don't remember it being Dwayne, but okay. In the second film of the franchise, amongst the discussions of their shared history and films they worked on together, Cameron had a few words to say about the Alien franchise. By the way, they've only worked on 4 movies together, which is still a lot, but it's just when you hear their history of working together, it's they did 4 films. So, by the way, anyone wondering what were the 4 films? They were, of course, were Terminator, The Abyss, Aliens, and Terminator 2 for a scene that got cut out. So being asked what he thought about Alien 3 killing off Newt. And as we reported on before, Cameron still hates the idea with a passion, but doesn't blame David Fincher for it, and echoes great respect for Fincher's work. By the way, this is on AVP Galaxy, that's why it says, as they've reported before. So Cameron continued by adding of his own record, saying, "The new Alien Earth is pretty good, and they've got a lot of the DNA from Ridley's film, from ours, and also from Fincher's, as well as with some of those aggressive POVs." So though when questioned about if he liked Alien Romulus, the tone was slightly different. You see the way it already says there, the tone is different. That's why I actually wanted to try and find the clips, but just couldn't find it. So it says, this is what, remember, Fede Alvarez says he gave him his blessing, thought it was fantastic. This is what he says: "I liked parts of it. I think it's inventive. It's different." When Biehn suggested that Blomkamp's Alien 5 was stopped by Ridley Scott, Cameron explained that he doesn't know the details about that at all, but does add his opinion on the director, saying, "He's a very inventive guy. He probably would have done something interesting." So I'd have also liked to gotten the question as well as the full answer, but you're kind of seeing how he's answering these things. But isn't it funny with Alien Romulus how he kind of said, and he does say a bit more about it, but it was like the one director saying he absolutely loved it, and the director himself is saying I like parts of it. So further, he mentioned what he particularly liked from Alien Romulus as well. So he said, "And Freddy did something interesting as well. I particularly liked the scene where they're weightless, floating in between the globs of floating alien acid, which is pretty nightmarish and well done." Right after that comment, Cameron openly admitted his thoughts on the franchise, saying, "You couldn't pay me enough money to go back to that franchise. It's sort of almost become fan driven." I think that's an interesting response right there. So it says, from previous interviews we've reported on, we've already knew he didn't have a desire to return, since he's already has a full alien world of his own focused on the Avatar, blah blah blah. Isn't it funny though that the reports now are that like he has absolutely zero intention of ever going back, that they could not pay him any amount of money to convince him to come back to the Alien franchise. And yet you kept hearing all these other directors and producers and stuff saying, "Oh, James Cameron, we approached him for this and he was very interested. Oh, he really wanted to help us out in the story with this one," and all of this crap. Again, Freddy Alvarez, "Oh, I sent the rough cut of the movie to Jim and he loved it, said it was the best thing he's seen in the franchise in years," and all this stuff. And now you're hearing Jim Cameron saying himself, like, "Yeah, Alien Romulus, yeah, I like parts of it. It was different, but yeah, I only liked parts of it. And as for coming back to the franchise, yeah, couldn't pay me enough money to return to the franchise." It's weird. It really is weird that these people try and prop up the idea of boosting their projects by saying Jen gave it his blessing and big thumbs up, when all someone had to do was ask James Cameron to his face, "Hey, what you actually think of this stuff?" And he's like, "It's alright." You know what I mean? It's weird. It's like, don't ever put yourself into these type of corners. Don't sit there and say something like, "James Cameron said this about my movie, and my God, how fantastic is that? I couldn't believe it. Oh, all my hopes and dreams came true." When someone's going to turn around and ask James Cameron, "Hey, did you actually enjoy that movie?" And he flat out kind of goes, "Not really, no." Like, why would you do it? Don't do it. And it's happening a lot more now lately, where we're seeing and being told by actors and other directors and stuff that a certain other person has said a certain amount of things. "Oh, we did this movie and they absolutely gave us our blessing." And when they turn around to the other person and say, "Did you?" They're like, "No." And that's not the first time it's happened with James Cameron either. Like, it was Jonathan Mostow, or Mostow, however you pronounce his name, the guy who directed Terminator 3, when he turned around and said, "James Cameron gave me his blessing. We wanted him to work with us and all this stuff. And, we showed him a cut of the movie and he thought it was great and all this stuff." And then James Cameron got asked, like, "What did you feel about Terminator 3? And he's like, he was super pissed off. Someone took his creation, which was Terminator, and went ahead and made it without him. He basically was like, I never really watched it. The only reason I gave it a good word of mouth is because Arnold was there and we're great buddies, and I told him to do it and asked him for all the money in the world to do it, which they gave him." That is what happened. So you gotta stop putting yourself into these corners. But it is funny to hear it from the man himself. Even though I read it, we didn't quite hear it because I couldn't find the bloody clips. But overall, I think it is interesting that he said flat out, "You couldn't pay me enough money to go back to that franchise." So I don't know whether that's a case of, obviously his experience making that movie wasn't the greatest because of the issues they had with the crew in Pinewood Studios in the UK. But I wonder if he's also reflecting on the fact that he's seeing how much interference Ridley Scott is putting into everyone else's version for Alien right now. It'd be interesting to find that out. But what do you guys think? Do you think they could pay him enough money to bring him back? Do you think he truly does mean like he's never coming back? And what do you think about the idea of the whole Alien Earth thing, or I should say Alien Romulus thing, where it was like the studio and the director and stuff were saying how fantastic James Cameron thought the movie was, to hear him flat out say, "Yeah, it was okay." Let me know. And with that, I shall leave it there for this one. So do like, share, subscribe and all that good stuff. Cheers. I'll catch you in the next one.